Let's get to it. 10. D.B. Cooper, the Ghost of the Sky. On a drizzly Thanksgiving Eve in 1971, a man calling himself Dan Cooper sat in the back of a Northwest Orient flight, looking like your average mid-level insurance salesman. He wore a dark suit, a mother-of-pearl tie pin, and ordered a bourbon and soda. But as the engines roared, he handed the flight attendant a note. It wasn't a request for extra peanuts. It was a calm, professional notification that he had a bomb, and he wanted $200,000 and 4 parachutes. No drama, no screaming. Just a man conducting business at 30,000 feet. What followed is the only unsolved skyjacking in American history. After the plane landed in Seattle to exchange the passengers for the cash, Cooper ordered the pilots to head toward Mexico, flying low and slow with the rear stairs down. Somewhere over the freezing, jagged wilderness of Washington state, he simply stepped out into the night. The FBI launched the most extensive manhunt in history, scouring the woods for a body or a parachute. They found nothing but a few packets of rotting $20 bills near a riverbank years later. No body, no equipment, and no Dan Cooper. The logical conclusion is that he died on impact. Jumping into a freezing storm in a business suit isn't exactly a high survival strategy. But the FBI officially closed the case in 2016 without a single concrete lead, leaving Cooper as the only man to ever beat the house in the sky. He became a folk hero, a man who vanished into the clouds and took the government's lunch money with him, much like the thieves who walked into a Boston museum and took history itself. 9. The Gardner Museum thieves, the billion-dollar frames. St. Patrick's Day in Boston is usually a blur of green beer and bad decisions, but in 1990 it was the backdrop for the greatest art heist in history. At 1:24 a.m., 2 men dressed as police officers buzzed the side door of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, claiming they were responding to a disturbance. The young security guards, perhaps a bit too trusting or perhaps just tired, broke protocol and let them in. Within minutes, the guards were handcuffed in the basement, their eyes covered with duct tape, as the officers began a methodical 81-minute shopping spree. This wasn't a smash and grab, it was an execution. They bypassed the alarms and headed straight for the masterpieces. They used box cutters to brutally slice Rembrandts and Vermeers out of their frames, showing a chilling lack of respect for the priceless canvas. They walked away with 13 works of art valued at over $500 million, now worth over $1 billion. Despite a $10 million reward and thousands of leads, the paintings have never been seen again. No one has been arrested, and the trail has gone cold enough to freeze time itself. The FBI believes the art was moved through organized crime circles, likely ending up in a private collection where it will never see the light of day. But the most haunting part? The museum still displays the empty frames on the walls, a silent, hollow testament to what was lost. It's a permanent scar on the face of the art world, proving that even a masterpiece can be disappeared, much like the bank car in Tokyo that vanished in a cloud of smoke. Imagine you're a bank employee in 1968 Tokyo, driving a car filled with 300 million yen in bonuses for factory workers. Suddenly, a police officer on a motorcycle pulls you over, shouting that your manager's house has been bombed and your car might be rigged with explosives. As you scramble out in terror, smoke begins pouring from the undercarriage. The brave officer crawls underneath to defuse the device, sparks flying everywhere. You run for cover, waiting for the blast, only to see the officer calmly climb into the driver's seat and drive away. The bomb was actually just a warning flare the thief had lit to create smoke. The police motorcycle was a stolen bike painted white. The robber didn't use a gun, he used the psychological weight of authority and a 50-cent flare. The Japanese police launched a massive investigation, collecting 120,000 pieces of evidence and investigating 170,000 suspects. They found the discarded motorcycle and the flare, but they never found the man or a single yen of the stolen fortune. The investigation lasted 7 years and cost more than the stolen money itself. In 1988, the statute of limitations on the civil suit also expired, meaning even if the robber walked into a police station today and confessed, he couldn't be prosecuted. He performed the ultimate perfect crime through simplicity and audacity. It's a level of planning that modern scammers can only dream of, though some, like the brothers in South Africa, found a way to do it with code instead of flares. In the world of crypto, losing your keys is the digital equivalent of "the dog ate my homework." But Reis and Amir Cage took it to a multi-billion-dollar extreme. In 2021, these two brothers, barely out of their teens, ran AfriCrypt, one of South Africa's largest crypto investment firms. They promised massive returns, and for a while, they delivered. Then, one morning, they sent a panicked message to their investors. The platform had been hacked. But here was the kicker. They explicitly told everyone not to report it to the police, claiming it would slow down the recovery process. By the time the investors realized they were being played, the brothers were gone, and so was nearly $3.6 billion in Bitcoin. Forensic investigators tracked the coins through a series of tumblers and mixers on the dark web, designed to make the digital trail go cold. The brothers vanished from the face of the earth, leaving behind empty offices and thousands of ruined lives. It wasn't a hack, it was a digital vanishing act that leveraged the anonymity of the blockchain to pull off a heist larger than most national budgets. Rumors suggest the brothers purchased citizenship in Vanuatu, a tiny island nation known for its golden passport program and its refusal to ask questions. While the world searches for their digital fingerprints, they are likely living in a jurisdiction where extradition is a foreign concept. They proved that in the 21st century, you don't need a getaway car if you have a VPN, a lesson learned decades earlier by the original king of fugitives, Robert Vesco. Robert Vesco was the man who looked at the American dream and decided it was for suckers. In the early 1970s, he took control of a massive mutual fund called Investors Overseas Services and proceeded to bleed it dry, pocketing an estimated $224 million. When the SEC came knocking, Vesco didn't hire a lawyer, he hired a pilot. He fled the United States, but he didn't go into hiding in some dingy basement. He went on a tour of countries that lacked extradition treaties, literally trying to buy his own sovereign territory. Vesco was a pioneer of the state-sponsored disappearance. He moved to Costa Rica, then the Bahamas, and finally settled in Cuba, always staying one step ahead of the FBI by greasing the palms of local dictators. He lived like royalty, surrounded by bodyguards and luxury, while the U.S. government watched helplessly from across the water. He wasn't just a thief, he was a financier for the world's most untouchable regimes, using his stolen millions to buy a life of permanent immunity. The official story says he died of lung cancer in a Cuban prison in 2007, after finally annoying the Castro regime. But many skeptics believe he faked his death one last time to retire in total peace. Vesco proved that if you steal enough money, you don't have to hide from the law. You can just move to where the law doesn't exist. It's a strategy currently being perfected by a modern whale who treated the Malaysian treasury like his personal piggy bank. If you've watched The Wolf of Wall Street, you've seen Joe Lowe's handiwork. He literally funded the movie with stolen money. Lowe was the mastermind behind the 1MDB scandal, where $4.5 billion was siphoned out of a Malaysian sovereign wealth fund meant to help the public. While the people of Malaysia struggled, Lowe was throwing million-dollar birthday parties in Vegas, gifting Leonardo DiCaprio a $6 million Oscar statuette, and buying a 250-foot super yacht. He was the ultimate social climber, using a mountain of stolen cash to buy his way into the Hollywood elite. When the House of Cards finally collapsed in 2015, Lowe didn't panic. He had already built a network of offshore accounts and high-level political connections that made him invisible. While his co-conspirators, including the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, were hauled off to jail, Lowe simply evaporated. He was spotted in Macau, then Shanghai, and then he was gone. The U.S. and Malaysian governments have been chasing him for years, but he remains a ghost, protected by the very wealth he stole. Current intelligence suggests he is living under the protection of the Chinese government, acting as a high-level intermediary while residing in a luxury villa in Shanghai. He's a living paradox, a man everyone knows whose face is on every most wanted list, yet who continues to live a life of opulence. He transitioned from a public figure to a shadow, much like the crypto king whose death left nearly $100 million in a digital grave. Jerry Cotton, the dead or alive crypto king. In December 2018, the CEO of Canada's largest crypto exchange, Quadrida CX, reportedly died suddenly while on his honeymoon in India. Jerry Cotton was only 30 years old, and according to his widow, he took the encrypted passwords to the exchange's cold storage wallets to his grave. This meant that $190 million, belonging to over 75,000 customers, was suddenly and permanently locked away. It was the ultimate oops in financial history, leaving investors with nothing but a death certificate they didn't quite believe. The skepticism turned into a full-blown conspiracy theory when investigators discovered that the cold wallets Cotton claimed were full were actually empty and had been emptied months before his death. Cotton had been running the exchange like a Ponzi scheme, using new customer money to pay off old ones while gambling away the rest on other exchanges. People began to wonder, did Jerry really die of Crohn's disease in a foreign hospital, or did he use his crypto millions to buy a new face and a new life? There was no autopsy, the funeral featured a closed casket, and the body was buried quickly. To this day, the Quadriga orphans are petitioning to have his body exhumed to prove he's actually in the box. Whether he's 6 feet under or sipping a drink in a private villa, Jerry Cotton managed to make a fortune vanish into thin air, a feat only rivaled by a man who dug through the sewers to throw a party in a vault. Albert Spaggiari, the sewer rat. Albert Spaggiari didn't just want to rob a bank, he wanted to humiliate the very idea of security. In 1976, he led a gang of sewer rats into the vault of the Société Générale in Nice, France. They didn't use explosives or guns. They spent months digging a tunnel from the city's sewer system directly into the bank's reinforced floor. When they finally broke through during a holiday weekend, they didn't just grab the money and run. They brought wine, cheese, and pâté and spent several days inside the vault, casually opening safety deposit boxes and having a picnic. They made off with 60 million francs, but Spaggiari's real masterpiece was the message he left on the wall: without weapons, nor hatred, nor violence. He was eventually caught after a member of his team talked, but Spaggiari had one more trick up his sleeve. During a meeting with a judge in his chambers, he showed the judge a fake secret document, and while the judge was distracted, Spaggiari leapt out of the window, landed on a waiting motorcycle, and rode off into the sunset. He spent the rest of his life as a fugitive, allegedly undergoing plastic surgery and living in various parts of South America and Europe. He died of throat cancer in 1989 while still in hiding, and his body was reportedly left outside his mother's house by his friends. He was a man who turned theft into performance art, proving that flair is sometimes more effective than force, a lesson the missing crypto queen took to the global stage. Ruja Ignatova didn't just start a company, she started a cult. Clad in ball gowns and dripping with diamonds, she told the world that her cryptocurrency, OneCoin, was the Bitcoin killer. She filled Wembley Stadium with screaming fans, promising that OneCoin would make everyone rich. The reality was much simpler. OneCoin didn't even have a blockchain. It was a multi-level marketing scam that raked in over $4 billion from people across 175 countries. She sold a dream of the future while running a scam from the past. In 2017, as the FBI and German authorities began to close the net, Ruja boarded a Ryanair flight from Sofia to Athens. She carried a small suitcase and a mountain of digital wealth. When the plane touched down, she walked off and disappeared. She didn't check into a hotel, she didn't call her family, she simply ceased to exist in the eyes of the law. She is currently the only woman on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, with a reward that keeps climbing as the years go by. Some believe she was murdered by the Bulgarian mafia to keep her from talking, while others are convinced she used her billions to fund a total physical transformation. There were rumors of her living on a luxury yacht in international waters, shielded by a private security force and a new identity. Ruja is the ultimate symbol of the digital age scam, a woman who sold nothing for billions and left the world holding the bag. But even her $4 billion ghost act pales in comparison to the man who created the game itself. 1. Satoshi Nakamoto, the $60 billion ghost. We've talked about people who stole money and ran, but Satoshi Nakamoto did something far more mysterious. He created the most successful financial instrument of the century, amassed a fortune of $60 billion, and then walked away without taking a single cent. In 2008, an anonymous figure using the name Satoshi Nakamoto published the Bitcoin white paper. For 2 years, he communicated with early developers, refined the code, and mined the first 1.1 million Bitcoins. Then, in 2011, he sent one final email saying he had moved on to other things and vanished. Satoshi's wallets have remained untouched for over a decade. He holds roughly 5% of the total Bitcoin supply, a hoard currently valued at over $60 billion. If those coins move, it would be the financial equivalent of a nuclear blast, likely crashing the crypto markets as investors fear a massive sell-off. But they don't move. They sit there, a digital monument to a man who either died, was arrested, or possessed a level of discipline that borders on the superhuman. The mystery of Satoshi is the ultimate oddly explained paradox. Dozens of people have been suspected, from computer scientists like Hal Finney to cryptographers like Nick Szabo, but the truth remains elusive. He is the only person in history to vanish away from the money rather than with it. He gave the world a tool to bypass the banks and then became the ghost in the machine. But while Satoshi left his fortune to rot, our bonus entry shows what happens when you leave the scene of the crime with a pocket full of diamonds and a very bad sandwich. The Antwerp Diamond Center was the world's most secure fortress, a subterranean vault protected by 10 layers of high-tech security, including Doppler radar, heat sensors, and a lock with 100 million possible combinations. It was designed to be impenetrable, a silent sanctuary for the world's most valuable stones. But on February 15, 2003, the guards opened the vault to find 123 safety deposit boxes forced open, and the floor covered in a sea of empty velvet cases. The unhackable vault had been hollowed out from the inside. Leonardo Notarbartolo didn't just break in, he performed a masterclass in low-tech subversion. He bypassed the Doppler radar using simple styrofoam, blinded heat sensors with hairspray, and neutralized magnetic fields with basic tape. But the real genius was the long game. Notarbartolo had spent 18 months living as an Italian diamond merchant in Antwerp, renting an office in the building, and using a miniature camera hidden in his pen to record the vault's security sequences. He built such a rapport with the staff that he was practically part of the furniture, gaining the very access he would eventually use to dismantle them. This meticulous infiltration meant that when the heist finally happened, the team moved with surgical precision, bypassing millions of dollars in tech for the cost of a drugstore shopping list. They didn't just take the diamonds, they took the pride of the entire Belgian security industry, leaving behind a vacuum where $100 million used to be. The investigation only caught Notarbartolo because of a moment of sheer human clumsiness. A half-eaten salami sandwich left at a rest stop contained his DNA. He was sentenced to 10 years, but he never revealed where the diamonds were. Even today, free from prison and living in plain sight, he maintains that the heist was actually an insurance fraud gone wrong, and that the diamonds were stolen from him before he could leave the building. It's a convenient story, but it leaves us with a haunting reality. $100 million in diamonds simply evaporated into the ether. Notarbartolo served his time, paid his debt to society, and now walks the streets as a man who knows exactly where a king's ransom is buried. He is the ultimate proof that you can lose the battle and still win the war as long as you can keep a secret better than a vault can keep a diamond. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the shadows of the world's most successful phantoms, do us a favor. Don't go out and rob a bank, you're not that smart, and your sandwiches are probably just as incriminating. Instead, hit that subscribe button and join our secret society of the well-informed. We're building a community of people who look past the surface and see the gears grinding underneath. If you want to feel smarter than the general population every single week, you're in the right place. What's the most impressive heist you've ever heard of? Drop it in the comments. We read every single one, mostly to make sure none of you are actually Joe Low. See you in the next one.